Hi guys, this is Dano from Hidden Bigfoot Research Labs. Today we are going to be replacing the brakes on this. I think it was a 2005 Dodge Stratus. Yes, it was an 05. And we're just doing the front brakes, replacing the pads. Okay, once you get it up off the ground and the wheel off, remember on a jack, do not actually get underneath the car without it being on jack stands, because the only thing holding that jack up is actually just a little oil ring. Just a little piece of rubber. That's why I like to stick the rim underneath the car. That way if it falls, it'll fall on the tire and not on me. Or at least that's the ideal of it. Always be careful working on these cars, guys. But with the tire off, now we can see the caliber. And to get to that slider bolt, alright, I can't use my flash as a light. See that slider bolt right there? It's just right on the back side of this caliber here. I had to pull off this little rubber cover from right here. Okay, on the back of there, that is a T45, and I'm just gonna bust that free real fast. I'm not gonna take it out yet, but I am just loosening it just a tiny bit, and then I'm gonna do the same thing to this one. Okay, I turned the wheel out so y'all can see that better. I did bring a clamp in case I need to compress that caliber, but a lot of times, if you're careful, you see how there's a hole right there, and I can get into that drum and then that pad there. I can squeeze that in just by slowly prying in. And you don't want to pry a lot because you want to give that time for the fluid to return back through the holes and back to the master cylinder. But if I need to, and see just that little bit, it's already given some. A lot of times that's a lot easier than trying to having to deal with taking it all apart, putting it back together, getting the clamp out, when you can just pry a little bit at a time. And once you get it more, see, it's quite a bit looser. And you see, I'm just barely applying pressure, and it's just sinking that caliber right on it. And you don't want to do it so that you scratch up your rotor or pry too much on your rotor. I just got a little bit of a bite there. Okay, you see this little spring here? Just simply kind of wiggle, and if you can unlatch it first, it's better. And then pull that out, and then see it just sets right out of the way. And then we can take those slider bolts out now. Okay, and I wanted to show y'all. Y'all see I am prying against the outer brake pad here. And whenever I'm able to pry like that, I'm able to pry a lot harder. That'll get the rest of that drum on in, and if not, I have that handy dandy clamp right there. Okay, now I'm gonna take these slider bolts out, which is a T45. That's what do these slider bolts on these brakes. You see how that is sliding back and forth real good? You want to make sure that your caliper will slide, or else that can lead to brake malfunctions later. That one's out. Okay, pull out the slider bolts, and you don't want them to get dirty, so I'm going to put them into the brake box, and then slide this out. I'm just going to try to set it here. Be careful with that metal brake line. Okay, and you see, here's where I was actually prying. I was doing most of my heavy prying on the outside of this brake pad, and on the inside of this drum, that's where I was getting most of my torque at before I could get here. And when I did have to pry a little bit, I just did it right there on the very farthest out of this notch. I mean, you can kind of see where my screwdriver rubbed rust on it. I may have nicked that with this thing. I think I did. Yeah, I did. I nicked that right there, flipping the brake around. See, I did more damage with this than I did the damn screwdriver. And see, when I did finally get the caliper off, it was already completely compressed, ready to go. If I needed to, I could put this clamp on it now and squeeze it the rest of the way in. And see, I would just clamp on in and tighten her up. But to put this back together, grab one inner and one outer. You see how there's two different ones here. The one with spokes goes inside. The outer goes outer, of course. But I'm gonna grease this up. They say it's for anywhere that your brake pads rub metal, not the rotor, but like where the braking mechanisms touch. And it's supposed to help reduce noise and rattling, and they say to use a little bit of it, so we'll use a little bit of it. Let's see, just rub the inside of those parts with a little bit of grease. You see how it's round and how the bottom of that is round? You want to keep those directions the same way. Snap that in so it's good and flush. And this one, you may have to put it in this way and then slide the caliper around it. I think that's what we got to do. And then slide that back on. You see how there's a notch right there? Make sure that brake notch goes into that notch. Alright guys, there's a perfect example of what I was talking about. The wheel was scotched and it went right up over that scotch. Went right up over the jack and fell on the tire. No damage was done, everything's okay, and everyone is safe. That could have been a broken leg, and that shouldn't have happened, but you see it did. But right there, you can see it went right up over that piece of wood. I guess their e-brake don't work on this car. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that. But okay, make sure your rotor is straight. Make sure your brakes are straight and sitting on their notch like these are. Check that bottom one real quick. Make sure everything's straight. Now these slider bolts, you want to grease them also. I'm going to grease them down. Once you get the bolts all greased up, slide them back in. You may have to shimmy it some, but you see right there where it comes out, that's the hole you're after. And just start it, and then do the next one, grease it up also, and then slide that bottom one in, and same thing, you want to make sure and get it started. Okay, we can snug them up. Alright, and then make sure your caliper can slide. And you see, that means that it's going to work right, that it'll come out evenly instead of just one side. If it gets in a bind, it'll only eat one side of the pad. Instead of together, it'll just see. That's why that's important. Tighten that up, and then this is done. Tighten it up real good. Same thing on the bottom one. Springs back on. They were a pain in the ass. That spring goes like that. Okay, put the little rubber caps back on. Alright, those are in. So slider bolts are tight. Brakes are on. Springs are on. Okay, and now guys, don't forget to pump the brakes. And what that does is that adjusts the calipers, the excess space back in. And brakes are done, guys. But alright, thanks for watching, and please subscribe to check out my other videos. And you would do this side or the other side just like this. Don't do one side at a time. Make sure and do your brakes in pairs. Putting the wheel on, you want to do a star pattern, and that'll help pull the wheel on straight. And then make sure, and once you get it on the ground, make sure your hubs are tight, or your lug nuts are tight, guys. Once she's good and where you can put weight on it. Now the brakes are done. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and check out my other videos. Laters.